Now, let's talk about the United Nations releasing revised figures for civilian deaths in Gaza. According to its latest report, around 5,000 women and 7,800 children have died in Gaza as a result of the war thus far. Cara, those numbers are obviously horrific, but these figures represent a huge revision because the new figures for civilian casualties are around half of the numbers the UN reported previously.
And remember, Rita, that these UN figures are based on figures from the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which, while it sounds very officious, is actually Hamas run. So they're Hamas figures. And responsible media, of which there seem to be fewer and fewer these days, have always approached those figures with cynicism. That's what all media outlets should have done from the start, given that they were coming from a terrorist organisation which was known for lying, for exaggerating, for a brutal invasion of Israel on October 7 that started the whole conflict, of course. So now the United Nations has finally revised down those figures because Hamas has revised them down. They show that the number of women and children who were killed was actually half that what was being reported before. Now, why this is important is because that brings the ratio of the number of militants that Israel says it's killed, Hamas terrorists, from to civilians, that ratio to 1-to-1, which is actually remarkably low for urban warfare when you look at any kind of war that's happening in urban areas, and this is a highly urban area that the Gaza conflict is happening in. And while any civilian death is tragic, it is quite incredible that Israel has managed to keep that ratio so low, and any civilian death really has to fall squarely on the terrorist group that triggered this whole war and that hides behind its civilians as human shields and puts its weapons and infrastructure in places like schools and mosques and homes. So I think we need to be fair when we're talking about this, and hopefully these revised figures will lead to maybe some correction in how this is being reported.
And it's so important that these figures that have been revised are now being reported, because unfortunately I go on social media and you see so much pro-Palestine content on there, and you see these figures that have come from a terrorist organisation just flooding social media feeds, and people don't have the right facts. So well done to you, Caroline and Rita, for really raising awareness for this issue.
Now let's go to the latest from our university campuses. We've got over 100 pro-Palestinian protesters disrupting an on-campus event at Monash University here in Melbourne. That was an event to commemorate Israeli terror victims. So it's almost like nothing is sacred for these protesters. They cannot just let that go without disrupting it. Meanwhile, over at Deakin University, lecturers were allowing representatives from the pro-Palestinian encampment to interrupt classes and address students. But there has been a development there at Deakin University. They've become the first university in Australia to order the dismantling of a pro-Palestinian encampment. They've said they want that to happen immediately, but the protesters are saying they're going to stay and fight. Gabby, this has got the potential to get even uglier.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine what that would look like, because it has become so ugly. And we're seeing this play out here in Australia and right around the world. What is happening at college campuses, there is so much anti-Semitism. We are seeing, in America, for example, the American flags have been burnt. We're seeing people take part in these protests that are even being paid to be there, reportedly. And it's quite scary, of course, for students who are just there to live their lives, to study. People have worked so hard to get a place at these universities, and this is what they're being subjected to almost every day. It appears that there are protests that are spiralling out and out of control. So look, I think it's great that the Deakin University is trying to take some leadership, trying to take some sense of control, because what is happening at these universities, it's getting out of control and it is getting really ugly.